Good morning. Thanks so much for watching one of my other videos. If you have not already subscribed, go hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell notifications so you will be notified every time I post a video. My name is Samantha. I am a local realtor here in Middle Georgia. And on this channel, I cover all things real estate, faith, and homeschool. I am a youth pastor, a homeschooling mom, and a full-time realtor. So let's get into today's topic. What is earnest money? So when you go to purchase a home, you have to put down what is known as earnest money. And so many of my buyers are like, oh my gosh, that's an extra cost. We weren't expecting that. What is that? So earnest money here in Georgia is usually 1% of the purchase price. So if the house is $250,000, you will be asked to put down $2,500. And the reason is it shows that you're serious about buying the property. And if you are buying a property that is listed on the Georgia MLS or the FMLS or Central Georgia MLS, any MLS, it makes the seller more confident to pull the home off the market and go under contract with you because you're showing that you're serious about purchasing the property. So there's two places the earnest money can be held. It is held in an escrow account, but it can be held at an attorney's office, and sometimes there are very, very, very few brokers here in the state of Georgia that will hold the earnest money. My broker does not hold the earnest money. All of my buyers turn their earnest money into the attorney of their choice that is going to be the closing attorney. Every once in a while, the seller will have a preferred closing attorney, but usually the buyer picks the closing attorney. The earnest money is then held in escrow. If it goes, sorry, I'm looking at my notes. So when is the earnest money paid? It is on the contract. It has to be filled in with a date, and it's usually paid anywhere between the day that it goes under contract and 3 days later. When I fill out a contract for my buyers, I always put earnest money shall be paid within 3 days. That way it gives my buyers time to either wire the money to the attorney's office or either drop off a check. In competitive markets, sometimes you will be asked by your agent to put down more earnest money because if you've got more than one offer on the table and you're putting down 5,000 where the other person is putting down 2,500, it's going to make you look more serious and your offer may be accepted over the person that put down 2,500. So what happens if the deal falls through? So if there is something called due diligence, and it's usually anywhere between 0 and 10 days. And the due diligence is the time when you as a buyer have the right to do an inspection on the house. And you can go in and take a second and third look at the house. You have time to pray about it, really decide if this is the house for you. If something happens, maybe God reveals this is not the house he wants for you, an inspection report comes back bad, then you have the right to unilaterally terminate that contract and you will receive a refund on your earnest money. Now, if for some reason we also do what is called a finance contingency. And usually for my buyers, it's anywhere between 21 and 24 days. And this is something that me and the lender will discuss together of how quick they think that they can get you funded for a house. The finance contingency holds past the due diligence days. So if for some reason we get down to that 18th, 19th day of being under contract and you lose your job or something happens and for some reason you can't get financed, you can get a refund on your earnest money because the deal did not go through because of financing. But if for some reason you get down and it's been 2 or 3 weeks out and something happens and you just decide not to move and you cancel the contract, then you do lose the earnest money, and the earnest money is then given to the seller. And that's fair for them removing the house from the market. So some mistakes to avoid is you need to pay very careful attention anytime we go under contract, and this should always be discussed. Your agent should have constant communication with you at all times. You should know the dates of everything, okay? And so you don't want to miss the deadline to pay the earnest money because at that point the contract is technically void because you missed something on the contract. Usually, we give a grace period and we can fill out an amendment, but that's not how it's supposed to be done. If you miss a date, then it's void. So pay very careful attention to the date that the earnest money needs to be paid by. Also, read the contingency dates very carefully. If you have a 10-day due diligence, you only have 10 days to decide if you really want that house. If your financing contingency is 21 days, your lender only has 21 days to have you ready to go. You need to have the clear to close and ready to close in 21 days. And another mistake is people assume that that's extra money they're paying out. It's not. So if the deal goes to closing and you owe closing costs, that comes off of your closing cost. So you're not actually paying any extra money. You're just paying some of the closing costs up front. So if you have agreed with your seller for the seller to pay closing costs, then that money, the lender will take it off the purchase of the house. The seller will still get the amount of money, but you're not financing as much because you've already paid some into it. And if for some reason you want that money back in a check at closing, then you need to discuss that with your lender and your agent before closing, because if not, the lender will do it their way. And that's just how it's done in most deals. So if you want it back at closing, that needs to be made known up front, and you can discuss that with your agent and your lender and the attorney. That way everybody's on board and a check will be prepared for you for you to get the money back at closing. I hope this has answered some of your questions about earnest money. If you have any more questions about earnest money or escrow or what it looks like to buy a property, I do have plenty more videos you can watch, or you can also leave them in the comments. I hope you have a great day.